Welcome to our house, the House of Fi. At the House of Fi, we are all about achieving financial independence for families. Wherever you are in your financial independence journey, we want our house to be a place where you can learn and get inspired. If you are a parent on the journey to Fi, then come on in. We're glad that you're here. Here are your hosts, Wendy and Tamika.
Welcome, House of Fi family. Today we are excited to welcome to the show Jamila Safran. Jamila hosts the widely successful podcast Journey to Launch. She has an incredible story from being an immigrant, being raised by a single mother, buying a house at age 22, and then marrying her husband and discovering the Fi community. Since discovering the Fi community, she's done some pretty amazing things, including saving over $168,000 in 2 years. She and her husband live in New York City, and they also have 3 beautiful children, one of them a brand new little baby girl. She has a really incredible story to share. We're sure that you're going to find her story not only inspirational, but you're also going to find some very valuable information as well. Enjoy the show. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to House of Fi. We have a very special guest today, and we are speaking with Jamila Safran from Journey to Launch. Hi, Jamila.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, Tamika.
Hi, Jamila. I am so excited today.
Well, so Jamila, you have your own podcast. It's called Journey to Launch, and I have been listening to that since it started, and you're very inspiring. And I was so good to hear your voice in the financial independence community.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to go ahead and dive into some of our questions. So, Tamika and I are both very familiar with who you are and presence in the financial independence community. But for our guests who may not know who you are, will you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Jamila Safran of the blog and podcast and financial platform Journey to Launch. I myself am on the journey to launch to financial independence, and I started Journey to Launch as a way to document and keep myself accountable to that. And it quickly morphed into me sharing the story, but then also having a lot of the questions asked of how I was doing it. And so it turned me into just helping other people reach it, which is why I started the podcast. And so now I have the podcast, and I'm a money coach, and there's a lot of other things I'm working on, but in general, Journey to Launch now is my baby that's growing. In addition to my other babies that are growing, and I'm super excited about where it's going, and that I'm introducing and helping so many people learn and just be more aware of FI.
I've been so excited just to see how well your podcast has been received. Like it got such a great reception, and it just seems to be growing so quickly. It's really awesome.
Thank you. It surprised me, that it's taken off in just a year, because it's literally been a year since I've launched it.
So you mentioned babies. Do you mind sharing your family structure?
Sure. So I'm married to my husband, and we have 3 kids. So we have a 4-year-old, Zach, 2-year-old, Luke, and we had a baby a couple months ago, Blake, who is 2 months. So depending on when this comes out, she's 2 months.
Aww. And so the baby's a little girl?
Yes, she's a girl.
Aww, how fun.
Yeah, so we are busy, as you can tell.
We're both mamas too, so we totally get it. Try and do everything. We have our hands in a lot of stuff, all 3 of us, and so we totally understand the busyness of life. How did you discover the financial independence community?
I first discovered it I did like a search. I don't know what exactly the term was. I'm sure it wasn't financial independence, because I didn't know what it was at that moment. But I searched something, and I think the Mad Scientist podcast came up. And from there, it was just, he just interviews people who are strictly on the path to FI. So I was totally I fell in love with what it was about, and the people talking about reaching independence and quitting their jobs or having the option to quit their job and retire early. It just, a whole new world opened up for me, and it led me down the rabbit hole to listen to other podcasts like Radical Personal Finance and just some other things. So I did some digging, found out about Mr. Money Mustache, and I was just hooked. And I thought to myself, if these people can do it, then why can I do it? And that's basically how I started.
I'm glad that you say that you found Mad Fientist first, because that's who I found first. And you're so right. Like, it was just this whole new world. And it was almost like this epiphany, like, oh my gosh, people are actually saving 50% of their incomes. That is nuts. But at the same time, it was like, these are just regular people. There isn't anything different from them. And so totally love that. So was your husband, was he on board when you found this new world?
Well, so I'm pretty lucky. I have a husband that's very easygoing and supportive. So when I first came home and told him, like, wow, like I was so excited. I was like, listen, you have to like understand what's happening out there. Like, there is a whole new world that we do not know about and we need to discover. And he was just like, okay. And so I started telling him more about it. And I think he was a little apprehensive at first because, I'm here telling him, okay, these people are saving a lot of their money. And then in 10, 15 years, even sooner, depending on how much money they can save, they're able to work to a point where they don't need to work anymore. So I think for him, he was just like, what does that mean for us? And what it meant for us was that, especially for him, was that he would need to contribute a significant amount to his retirement accounts that he had available to him, because he's a teacher. So he had the 457 plan and the 403B plan. So he had the two accounts that he would be able to contribute to and max out, in addition to me maxing out my account, my 401k. So for him, I think the stretch was a bit more because even though we combined our finances, for him to make the switch of, oh, I'm only contributing 3%. And now if we're maxing this all out, this is going to be half of my check going into these accounts. I think for him, it was he was a little bit taken aback at first, but I did my best to take it easy. I understood that just because I had this epiphany didn't mean that he did too. And so I kind of just worked with him. We had meetings about it. I'm a spreadsheet person. So I had spreadsheets showing him, if we did this and we saved this much, we would have $1 million in X amount of years. So I think that started to get him on board, and he slowly came around. I mean, it actually didn't take too long because, again, I just started to show him like, hey, this is the kind of life we can live now and still be happy, but then we can set ourselves up for something really, really good, and got him excited about it. And then he said to me one day, okay, let's just do this. And so he just upped his contribution amount. So that was great.
Yes, I can really relate to that, because not everybody is so lucky to have somebody who, not everybody is so lucky to be able to describe this whole new world, this concept of a whole new world, to describe how your life's going to change now, but then to be able to describe how it can be in the future in such a way that the person actually maxes the 457. They make such a change to their contribution. So how exactly did you do that? So I'm sure that a lot of people listening are going to face convincing that significant other.
That's a good question, because I really believe they have to want it too. I mean, my husband is not a full on financial person where, he's not a spreadsheets person. He really just trusts me, and he knows that I have our best interest at, heart. So one of the things that I did was I always make sure that just because I have this goal of reaching financial independence and not having to work again, quote unquote, doesn't mean that has to be his goal. And one of the things I know that he wants is he's a little bit more fancier than me. So right now we save, and we're pretty basic in terms of like the things we buy and we do. But I know that if he could have it his way, he'd want a nicer car. So things like that, where to me, a nice car doesn't matter to me anymore. And when I say nice, I mean like a more luxury car. So instead of looking down at him for that or saying, no way, like that doesn't make sense, I don't do any of that, because I feel like if that's what he wants, that's what he wants. So I always frame it as, one day we hope to be able to do that for him. So if he wants a nice car one day, let's make it happen. And so I tell him that we can prioritize what we each want, and we can both work towards it. Now, right now, having the family and pursuing this, the luxury car doesn't fit in immediately, but I don't see it as something out the question. So I think he appreciates that. I think we both appreciate that we are looking out for each other and still want the best. And I don't judge him for whatever he wants. And that helps us out a lot, because if I came out saying, this is what it is and we should do this, and I was kind of too much like beating him down and cracking the whip on him about it, I don't think he'd be so receptive. But he knows that I want him to be happy too. And so I think because of that, he trusts me in kind of planning this all out.
Are you the person in your household who controls the finances? Not controls, but, takes care of paying the bills and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for the most part. So a lot of our bills are automatic. I mean, he's responsible. He pays certain things that I don't even see, like the water bill and certain things like he just does. But in terms of budgeting, like I'm the one that would set up the budget in YNAB, and then like he also has it on his phone. So he sees it, and, we'll talk about it here and there. And, I'm the one that will say, okay, I think we need to talk to our tax advisor, or we need to set the meeting up. So I kind of lead in that way, and I'm totally fine with it. So it works out for us in that sense.
So, we're all three of us are more, I think, professional type women, entrepreneurial type women, totally type A personality, that sort of thing. But, not all women are that way, but maybe they want to be. So I guess what I'd like to know is, for maybe our listeners who are either new to financial independence or new to taking care of finances in general, do you have any suggestions for them or places that they can start to be more involved
with the finances? Like if the husband or their spouse is doing a lot more of it,
right?
I'd say you can, make sure you have all the login information also. So that's another thing, you build that trust up with your partner doing that. And so you can log in and you can also see what's happening, and when things need to be paid, if that, just so nothing like falls through the cracks. So I'd say one, just make sure you just have the information that you can also log in and check things. And then I'd say also set some money dates up, set budget dates up. So for my husband, when I came home and I told him about this, I said, okay, on Friday, let's talk about this. I have some wine. So I made it like a relaxing conversation and like kind of like a fun conversation. And so I think maybe if you're wanting to get more control or more involved, to say to your spouse, your partner, hey, let's talk about this. But then start out making it light. Don't make it so heavy where, it's like Armageddon is about to happen.
Right. So were you always frugal with your money?
I would say I wasn't always frugal. I've spent money on things that nowadays I would never spend money on. So my 20s, I bought a luxury car, and again, nothing's wrong with the luxury car, but now I would know that according to my goals where I could put that money instead. And I bought luxury bags, things that for me right now, I don't really care about. And so I don't consider myself frugal, but I am a simple person. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not really into a lot of, I'm not into getting my hair done and my nails done and clothes and maybe some things that other people like. So I'm able to save money in that sense. But there are things that I like spending money on, or I enjoy. Like I enjoy going out to eat. I enjoy a nice cocktail. I live in New York City, so obviously like it's a little bit more expensive here. Some restaurants are more expensive. So for me, it's like I save in certain areas, but then I do spend in certain areas.
Do you have any early financial mistakes?
Yes, I would.
I know some of your mistakes.
You do, right? You're right, Tamiko. Yeah, so not putting enough in my 401k at work. So I've been working with the same company since I graduated from college. And when I graduated, I could care less about retirement because I didn't know that this was possible, that there was such thing as early retirement, quote unquote. I thought I had to work forever. And so I really just put the bare minimum in. I mean, at least I think I did it to get the match, but knowing what I know now, I would have totally just maxed it out from the beginning and I would have been in such a better place. But I don't harp on that. But I'd say that's probably my biggest mistake, is not starting earlier. It's not starting to invest earlier.
Right now you have little ones. So your oldest is only 4. Do you have any financial or money lessons that you're starting to, or concepts that you're starting to share with your kids?
Well, so yeah, you're right. They're so young. And so I don't really, we don't talk about, like budgeting or anything yet, but he's now, he realizes like commercials and things on TV. So I notice him now saying, Mommy, can you buy me this? Or I want this. And like, usually I'm just like, okay, okay, like we can use your money. Where's your money? And he's just like, I don't have any money. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So when you get some money, then you can buy it. But I think so far, no, there haven't been any conversations. But what we plan to do for sure is to, we haven't decided on allowances yet for them, but I'd want to set them up, even if we're giving them like $1, that to them understand, okay, half of it should go into this piggy bank and 25 cents should go in this, and we can build up to buy some of the things that you want. So I'm thinking about those things now. And I think they kind of notice. I mean, my husband and I, again, we don't spend money on a lot of things, so clothes and like fancy things like birthday parties. We do spend money on experiences, so taking them to the zoo and to the aquarium and things like that. So I think they'll be able to see that as they grow, that mommy and daddy are simple people, and we're not like spending on the most luxurious things, but we do like to show them experiences and show them things. So I think hopefully along with the direct conversations, they'll see through our effort kind of where we value things and how we spend our money.
How old is the oldest again?
He's 4.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's young. We had a guest the other week, Amy Coit, who wrote Kids' Money Habits, and it was such an eye-opening experience talking to her about prepping your children and doing some really intentional initial things using nickels. So she basically, had them on hand and had a system that she used where you just repeat these nickels. I think that it's one of those things where you have to wait until they're a certain age, and it's hard to know when that is when you have your first and oldest child. I love how in the financial phase, we're thinking of these things at an earlier time than we would have if we hadn't found this. I know in your previous interview you were on the Choose FI podcast, and you talked about your mom becoming, I think you said that she was able to learn certain things and she would bring those into her home. And I feel like the financial podcast, the financial independence industry is kind of this way to look into what other people are doing and then optimize your own life based off of that and just pull what really works for your life.
Right.
So,
it's pretty actually amazing when you think about it, right? Like that you don't have to necessarily have been directly exposed to certain things and behaviors and habits. But if you are someone who is an open mind and open eyes, you can learn from other people. So yeah, you're right. My mom, luckily for me, I had a mom like that, where just because she didn't grow up with that, she saw that my grandmother was coming home saying that my grandmother worked as a nanny for wealthier people in the city. And so she'd come home and tell my mom like, oh, I'm reading to these kids every night and taking them to the library, and they have all these things that they do with their kids to not just like monetary, but just pouring into them. And so my mom, even though she didn't have any or much money, that's what she did with me. And so those are the things now I want to do with my kids. And my mom didn't talk to me specifically about money or budgeting. She didn't know that she should. So when I think about like how I turned out, I'm just like, all right, I didn't turn out so bad. So if I now can talk to my kids about budgeting and just show them through how my mom showed me, like, reading and going to the library and just building up the character of the child, like I'm just hope that they'd be way better versions of even what I'm doing now.
Well, I think it's amazing what you're doing. You're chronicling all of the learning, and you're pulling from all of these different experts in different spaces who give you the information, and then your children can listen to these podcasts at some point, and they'll have you as that reference. And it's true. The connection from one person to another and the influence is so much more, it's so much more transient now, that I think that's why Wendy, she loves the fact that you specifically have lots of guests that are women and persons of color, because the impact that your podcast can have on those two groups of people, it's just that much more magnified. Why do you think that it's important to have guests that are women of color and people of color?
It's important because when I first entered into this community, I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me or talked like me. I'm not polished in a sense. I don't believe that I'm the smartest person in the room, but I think I'm smart. And, I'm from Brooklyn. I was born in Jamaica, the island. So I just feel like there's a lot of cultural and social backgrounds and just behaviors that I have that I would just love to see more people who look like me in the space accomplishing like the same things I am. And again, I'm a person, I learn from everyone. And so it doesn't really matter color, but I do specifically make it a goal to make sure I am bringing diverse voices on, that if I do see someone of color on the journey of FI, like I'm immediately, like my eyes are wide open and I want to learn more and want to have them on the show. Because I feel like other shows don't necessarily, you know, I don't know how they source people. I'm sure they kind of just look at it as they just want the best talent or the best person to come on. And that's totally fine. And I mean, I'm looking for that too. I want quality guests, but I like make it my business to I'm looking at, okay, how many, what's the diversity of the people that I've had on in the last month? And are their stories all the same? Does it all sound the same? Like, what can I do differently? So I'm constantly, that's always on the forefront of my mind, because my goal is to make this accessible to everyone. Yeah. And in order to do that, I think you just need to have a more diverse group of people talking about it. And if you notice, like in the groups that we're in, like, so that's Choose FI, even my group, or just other FI group, or whether it's the mustaching groups online, there are people of color. There are, you know, people in different circumstances, you know, people with disabilities or single moms or single dads. So there are different types of people, but they don't necessarily bubble up to the point where people are interviewing them or have them on shows. And that's why I want to do more of that and say, hey, no, we are out here. And so it can inspire more people to do this.
Oh, it has such an impact.
You had on your show, gosh, I wish I could remember the name of it was two gentlemen, and they have budgets and something.
Paychecks and balances.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so funny because literally, you know, one day my husband and I we were driving in the car, and I was just really thinking about, you know, I have got a lot of children. I've got 6 kids. There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of children in this room. I think total we have like 12 kids all together.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
I was thinking about my kids, but specifically I was thinking about my boys, and I was thinking, you know, gosh, there aren't a whole lot of financial examples for them except for their dad. And I was just thinking, gosh, I wish there were some podcasts that I could listen to, or, you know, just examples for them. And literally the very next day you had them on your show, and I was like, oh, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I love when someone says, oh, I related to this guest, or this was very helpful for me. Like they were speaking directly to me. And not every guest will resonate. And, you know, there are some things you maybe can't relate to everything, but I'm so glad that you were able to find that connection for them, because they are out there. So yeah. It's more of finding them, making it more of an intentional decision to find them out, seek them out, and then put them on the platform so other people can find out about them.
Well, I definitely noticed that you have been intentional about that. And I know both Tamika and I we've talked about it on more than one occasion, just being very grateful that you came out so quickly and with, you know, such success, and you're putting people on your show that I think really could make a difference and give just a really great perspective. And as far as I know, you're one of the only ones really doing it so consistently. In that same vein, how do you think other influencers in the FI community can help give that exposure?
I think by just being intentional about it. So, you know, looking at your lineup of guests you have coming on, or the guests that you're reaching out to, and saying, do they all look alike? Or especially look alike? Like everyone has a different story, but are they all like white men? Are they all, you know, from one high cost of living? Are they all the same type of profession? Like, so I think it just takes someone being intentional about saying, you know what, we don't have enough diversity here. We need more people of color or people of different circumstances that we can put on. So I think it just takes intentionality to do that.
You did mention that you live in a high cost of living area. Are you doing anything to help with your expense of living in such a high cost of living area? Like, are you doing anything to help your housing costs, or had you done that in the past?
So, you know, I was very fortunate. I mean, I did some things to make this happen too, but I was very fortunate to buy my first property right out of college in a very up and coming neighborhood that now is the most expensive place to buy real estate in Brooklyn and New York, I think, New York City. So I made that was my best investment decision. I did that at 22. So I lived in that condo. It's in Dumbo, Brooklyn, which stands for down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. And so at the time when I bought it, you know, it wasn't really a place to be. Now everyone wants to be there. It's very expensive to live. So I've made that investment. I lived there for a couple of years. And when my husband and I got engaged, we moved into his mom's basement. So across town, and we were able to save a lot of money that way. And we were even able to buy our first condo together, which we eventually sold. And then we were able to buy the house that we live in now. And I think so one thing I didn't mention was when I did buy my condo at 22, it was a new construction. So it wasn't built yet. And so I spent 2 years living at home with my mom. So I was able to save money that way. And then when we got engaged and I moved out of that condo, we moved into his mom's house, like I said. So again, we were able to save money and save on costs because of the help of family, because of our parents. So I'm very grateful for that.
That's awesome.
I think that a lot of people listening have different types of privilege, and it doesn't always come in the form of money being passed down, from another generation. It does also come in the form of you having your family nearby to help. It saves me so much money in terms of childcare, sometimes food. My mom will cook and I'll go pick up the kids and then I'll bring the food back and have dinner, or having a place to live. I also lived in my parents' attic, which is a finished attic with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom and everything, after I graduated, and then lived downstairs they have a 2-family when I started working in accounting years ago. So sometimes you have to take advantage of what you have available to you, and it opens you up to do things like buy this prime real estate that now has just magnified your net worth.
Right. And that's such a good point about the privilege comment, because you're right. It doesn't all have to look like you had a nest egg or a trust fund given to you. And there are people in poverty who literally have, like, they probably couldn't leverage anything. I'm sure there are people like that. But I'm one of those people where I see the silver lining in everything. And so even if maybe you're not a high income earner, or you're not in the best financial situation, and maybe you don't have parents that would be able to do this for you, I always feel like there's always probably something in someone's life that if they looked at it a bit differently, they can leverage and then use that to get ahead, even if it's just a step. So it doesn't have to be a big leap. But I'm always curious, like when I talk to people, when I interview people, what that was for them. Because for me, yes, like my mom. And so when I look back at like my mom and what she was able to do for me, I'm just like, she didn't have anything. But yet the way she gave back to me, and even my husband's mom, they were immigrants from Haiti. My husband's father like hardly still like speaks English, but they were able to buy their home and we lived in that basement. And so there are things where it's just like, what is it like in your life? If you're looking at your life and you're like, well, I don't have that. I don't have parents that can help me, but is there something else? Is there something else that you can leverage or do? Can you, were you fortunate enough to be bilingual? Right. And then maybe that gives you an upper edge on a side hustle. Like I'm just always thinking of ways in which, okay, how can you turn something that looks like it's not a big deal or it won't help into something that will help you along the path?
You're on this path to financial independence, and you and your husband are like you're killing it. You're doing so good. Can you tell our listeners kind of what you've been able to accomplish since you found the financial independence community?
Sure. So when we first started, we weren't really saving or investing money intentionally. And then after we created a plan to do this, the first 2 years combined, we were able to save and invest $169,000. And so that was in, maxing out his 2 retirement accounts, his 2 pre-tax retirement accounts, and maxing out my pre-tax retirement accounts. And then our Roth IRAs we did, and some, investment. We did index investing and 529 accounts. So we were able to do that in 2 years, which was pretty awesome. And it's funny because my goals or my outlook has changed since starting this journey. And part of that is because of Journey to Launch, because it's now a business that I would like to be full-time doing. Right. And so when I look at it that way, it's like investing in index funds or investing in my business and myself so that I can potentially reach FI faster, or I can be happier on the journey to FI, even if it takes longer. So originally when I started, I said, I want to do it by 40, and I was 33 at the time. And now, since our goals have changed a bit and, we've since had 2 more kids, it feels like, okay, we're adjusting our plans and we'll see how it goes. But I'm definitely, we're still on the journey, but it's a bit different now.
I think that's so interesting in that, things do change, but it doesn't, it just means you tweak it just a little bit. But it's also because you have this new business that will, if you're able to do it full time in the sense of not necessarily 40 hours a week, but that it provides you a full-time income so that you have the flexibility to be home with your children and with your spouse more, which is in some sense the whole goal of financial independence to begin with. So,
Right.
I think about that a lot too. When I think about retirement, it's not necessarily, what people envision of retirement. But if I were to able to build a business that allowed me to be at home with my kid, it was very flexible and remote and all of that, then that would be fantastic too. And then that helps reduce how much I would need to get to that buy number. Has that taken you where you thought you would be for retirement?
Yeah, I think you kind of summed it up really well, where the goal for me is to have the option to spend the time with my kids, to do the things I love, and to feel happy and motivated and inspired about my day and my work. And so if I'm able to find that now with Journey to Launch, which is what I did, which is how I feel, then yes, it changes things a bit, but it also makes you realize that, I think for a lot of people, the golden gate or the end goal of FI is far away. And so when they're on the journey, it seems like, oh my gosh, like how do you stay motivated? How do you keep going when it's 10, 15 years away, depending on your circumstances? And it's just like, you do need to find something in the meantime, whether that's just a hobby, a side hustle, or a community that you can rally with and rally around you. It does need to be enjoyable. So I feel like I've found something that not only makes this journey enjoyable, but it can also be the catalyst that helps me further along on it. So I'm just like, it's been an interesting time for me, because I'm considering like all my options at this point and what I want to do and how that affect the whole initial plan.
And so do people you work with, do they kind of know what you're doing, or do they know about your podcast?
It's funny because I was keeping it on the hush and on the low for like, I do not talk about it at my job. And I don't talk about it at my job. I didn't want anyone to find out, because I didn't want them to like think, oh, your goal is to quit at some point. I mean, I know that, it just, for me, I was trying to just keep it separate. And I got profiled in Money Magazine, which was then syndicated everywhere. Like it literally was like on MSN, on the Yahoo home screen page. It was in a number of places where I got a couple of emails from my job, and I'm on maternity leave now. So I'm not in the workplace or in the office, but I got a couple of emails saying, hey, is like, what's happening? Like, this is you on the like cover of Yahoo, like .com. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So they didn't know, but now they know. And it's been, at first I had like a heart attack, because again, it's funny. It's funny how I'm able to talk about this with so many people, thousands and thousands of people who now listen to my podcast, but yet people in real life, I kind of am more reserved about it. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's an interesting thing. I think I just have to get over a bit. But yes, they do know now. That's what I heard from some people in the office, that everyone's kind of like, they know about it. And I do believe some people now listen to the podcast. So I'm just, I'm still amazed that it's actually gotten out there in that way.
Being in Money Magazine is a big out.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
No way you can hide from that.
I'm sure many people will go and listen to your podcast now, but you work so far away from your home. How are you going to manage that? It's like an hour drive, right? Or
well, it's an hour and a half to 2 hours. Sometimes on my way home it would take me 2. But yeah, it's pretty far, and with all the small kids, and it was a lot. And so I know that for me, I was burning out, and I was pregnant. So I just had the baby, and so I was doing all this. I was working full time, had Journey to Launch, which was taken off, and I didn't want to take a break with that. I was pushing forward, and then I had the small kids, and I was pregnant. And so as you can imagine, it was a lot for me the last 9 months. And so right now I'm just refocusing and trying to just figure out what I want to like do long term. Right. And because I don't think that that's sustainable and healthy, doing what I was doing, because I think at the end of the day, like I couldn't go full force with Journey to Launch the way I was doing it and still work in such a demanding job and have that commute and have the family. Like something would have to give. Right. So I think for me, it's just deciding what is it? Like, what am I going to give up, or what am I going to cut back on to make sure that I'm not burning out?
Well, and you guys, you were so diligent in these first 2 years that now you have, I don't know if it's to the point of FU money, but you have something. So does that play into your decision making at all?
Yes.
So, if you hadn't picked up on that, Jamila wasn't quite ready to share some pretty exciting news at the time of our interview. However, since then, she has made a pretty exciting announcement. After you're done listening to our podcast here at House of Fi, hop on over to Jamila's podcast, Journey to Launch, episode 61 from September 5th, where she gives her pretty awesome news that she has quit her job. All right, so now back to the show. Well, we're almost to the end of our time. We do have a couple final questions for you. And so the first question is, what was one lesson you learned about money or finances, good or bad, growing up that you have carried over into your FI journey?
I've learned the value of working for money. So I saw my mother working as a single mom to provide for me. And because of that, I've always just valued money. I never viewed it as something to take for granted. I wasn't necessarily spoiled, and I didn't get a lot of things given to me, and I had to work for them. And so because of that, I'm very aware that money is a tool. Like, it's not the end all be all, but that it should not necessarily go to waste. It should be something that, you use to provide yourself a better life and your family a better life. But, you have to be smart about it, because you're working, you're trading your energy and your time, for the most part, for money.
And so the second question is, let's pretend that your children are listening and that you have their ear and their undivided attention, not necessarily at their ages now, but at a point where, they can absorb and understand what you want to say to them. What lesson about money would you want to convey to them and have them carry over into adulthood?
I'd say to my kids that I'd want them to be intentional about how they earn money and spend money. So by earning, I mean, I'd love for them to be happy. I wouldn't want them to find themselves stuck in a job that they hated just for a paycheck.
Right.
So because of that, I want them to be intentional about how they go about choosing their careers and what they intend on doing in the world, because I really do believe that if you're passionate about something, that not necessarily that the money will come, but that you just have a better life. You'll be fulfilled more in life than just having money. So I just want them to be intentional about how they earn it and then how they spend it. And so not spending it just because it's cool or to keep up with the Joneses, and because who knows where social media will be when they're in their teenage years. That affects our kids nowadays.
Right.
So I just want them to be intentional and kind of stand on their own. And if something's just not cool, if they don't want it, they don't have to buy it just because everyone else is.
So you talked about some life hacks that you had as far as living with family members and that sort of thing. Do you have any other life hacks that you think would be helpful for other parents?
So I've always operated from the save first and then spend what's left model. Even when I was an intern throughout college, which is how I was able to come up with some of the money for the purchase, I just came up with a number and I said, I'm going to save that, and I'm going to just have to make whatever else work. And so that kind of happened when it came to now maxing out all our retirement accounts, because they were all pre-tax. So it's automatic, you can go in and do it automatically. And so when we maxed everything out, it was we had to deal with what was left, and we had to budget from there. So it kind of took the pressure and the decision making off of us to have to say, okay, we got to go in every month and decide what we're doing with the money. So I would say, as a life hack, just switch your thinking to your goals to saving and investing first, and then living off what's left. And that way, whatever is left, you prioritize. So you might not be able to do everything, but you're able to reach your goals.
I like that one a lot. I listened to Dave Ramsey for a really long time before finding the financial independence community. And so I'd heard that for years and years and years. Put your save first, put your savings in first. But I never did it because I always felt like we couldn't afford it. And in January of this year, we just did it. We said, okay, we're just going to do it. We'll figure out the rest after. We're just going to, and what's funny is it all still works. If you just do it, things will
figure out a way.
Right. You figure out a way. you'll either bring your income up to, meet the needs, or you'll reduce your spending. All right. So Jamila, what is the best way for people to find you?
Sure. You can find me at journeytolaunch.com. I'm also on all social media. So if you're on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, you can just type in Journey to Launch and I'll come up. And also listen to my podcast. So everywhere you can listen to this amazing podcast, you can find my podcast. And again, hit me up. I love responding and connecting with people who want to talk more about financial independence.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jamila. This was exciting. We were both really, really happy to get you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, House of Five family, that brings this episode to a close. We appreciate you listening. And if you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. To show our appreciation, for every 5 reviews we receive, we will reward that listener with one of our favorite reads. And you can find out what that is in our show notes. Don't forget to also send us an email with your review screen name so that we can track who has left a review. Our hope for this show is that we have both inspired you and provided you with practical tools to aid you in your journey to financial independence. We welcome your feedback, and you can do that in one of 3 ways. You can message us on our website, houseoffi.com, through the contact page. You can also leave a voice message there. The final way is that you can send us an email at info@houseoffi.com. We read every message. Once again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you back here next week.